It was a quiet, sunny afternoon when I first heard about Ethan and Clara's anniversary. I was in my kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when I received the call. My hands paused as I looked down at the screen. Ethan's name appeared. "Hey, Mum," he said, his voice carrying the same warmth that always brought a smile to my face. "I just wanted to let you know that Clara and I are celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary soon. We're doing something special this year, and I really hope you can make it." I was thrilled. 5 years of marriage, an important milestone. I had watched Ethan grow from a child to a man, and now, seeing him share this special moment with Clara, I felt proud. "Of course, Ethan. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Just tell me where and when," I replied, my excitement bubbling over. There was a brief pause on the other end, and when Ethan responded, I could hear the hesitation in his voice. "It's at that new place in town, La Bella Luna. It's kind of fancy, so I thought you might want to get dressed up." I laughed, imagining myself in a nice outfit. "I'll be there. Don't worry," I assured him, though something about the tone of his voice bothered me. It wasn't the usual enthusiasm that I was accustomed to when he invited me to things. It felt more like an obligation, as if he wasn't entirely sure about it himself. But I pushed the thought away. I was overthinking things, I told myself. This was a special night, and I was excited to be there for him. The night of the celebration arrived, and I found myself standing in front of the mirror in my living room, adjusting the hem of my dress. It was a deep navy blue, simple but elegant. I wanted to look good for my son, for his anniversary, to show him that I cared. I had bought a small gift for him and Clara, a photo frame with a picture of their wedding day, one I had found in an old album of mine. I thought it would be a sweet reminder of the day they said their vows. I felt a slight flutter of excitement as I grabbed my purse and headed out the door. This was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a celebration of love, a moment where family came together. But even as I drove to the restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was just the nerves of being in a fancy place, or perhaps the quiet in the car was making my thoughts wander. But I couldn't shake that nagging feeling. What was it about Ethan's tone on the phone? Why did he sound so distant? When I arrived at La Bella Luna, I was taken aback by how beautiful the place looked. The large windows were adorned with twinkling lights, and the elegant decor made the restaurant look like something out of a romantic movie. I stepped inside, scanning the room for Ethan and Clara, but there was no sign of them. I checked my phone again, double-checking the time. It wasn't too late. They couldn't have started without me, could they? I felt a bit uneasy as I approached the hostess at the front desk. "Excuse me, I'm looking for my son and his wife. They're celebrating their anniversary tonight," I said, trying to smile through my uncertainty. The hostess nodded with a polite smile and began scanning her list. "Let me check for you," she said. After a moment of silence, she looked up and asked, "May I have your name?" "Thompson. Sophia Thompson," I answered, trying not to feel out of place. The hostess's face tightened as she scrolled through the list. "I'm afraid I don't see your name on the guest list, Miss Thompson," she said, her voice a little too formal for my liking. "Is it possible that your son forgot to mention you?" My heart skipped a beat. No, he said I was invited," I responded, the pit in my stomach growing deeper. This wasn't making sense. How could Ethan have forgotten to mention me? How could he have forgotten to add me to the guest list for their anniversary dinner? The hostess hesitated for a moment before offering a weak smile. "I'm terribly sorry. Let me check with the event coordinator to see if there was a mix-up." As she turned to walk away, I stood there, trying to hold back the rush of emotions, threatening to surface. What was happening? Was this a mistake? Had Ethan not told Clara I was coming? My mind raced with all the possibilities, each more confusing and painful than the last. Moments later, the hostess returned with a woman who looked more confident in her demeanor. Someone who appeared to be in charge. "Are you Miss Thompson?" The woman asked, her voice polite but distant. "Yes, I am," I answered, trying to keep the quiver in my voice from showing. She hesitated, almost as if unsure of what to say. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Your son and his wife, Clara, specifically requested a small private dinner this evening. It seems there was a mistake with the guest list." I felt a chill spread through me, my heart sinking. "What do you mean by a small private dinner?" "My son invited me. I spoke to him just a few days ago. He said it would be a celebration for all of us." The woman glanced at the hostess, and I caught the subtle exchange between them before she turned back to me. "I'm sorry, Miss Thompson," she said, her voice now cooler, "but we were instructed not to add anyone to the list who was not explicitly invited by the couple. I'm afraid your name wasn't on the guest list." The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I felt myself stagger back, my breath catching in my chest. But Ethan said I was invited. I'm his mother. I'm part of this family. The woman's expression softened, but only slightly. "I'm sorry, Miss Thompson. There's really nothing I can do." I stood there, stunned, as the weight of the situation pressed down on me. My son had deliberately excluded me from this moment. He had invited me, made me feel included, and then allowed Clara to shut me out. My heart broke, as I realized that not only was I not wanted at this celebration, but my son hadn't stood up for me. He hadn't even thought to call me before tonight, to warn me about what was going to happen. He had let Clara make this decision without any regard for my feelings. I felt the sting of rejection cut through me. The warm excitement I had once felt about being a part of Ethan's special night was now replaced with a deep ache. It wasn't just about a dinner or an anniversary. It was about being shut out of a part of my son's life. It was about realizing that I no longer had a place in his world, not the way I thought I did. I turned and left the restaurant, my gift still in my hand, untouched. As I walked to my car, the tears I had been holding back for so long finally spilled over. The pain was sharp, but it was more than just this one night. It was the realization that I had been pushed out, that my role as a mother no longer seemed to matter to Ethan or Clara. And it hurt more than anything else ever could. The worst part, I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if I could ever go back to being a part of his life in the way I once was. And I wasn't sure if he even wanted me to. The days following that night at the restaurant were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. How I had been so confidently invited, and then so coldly turned away. The entire evening felt like a cruel joke, one that I had been the punchline of. But the sting of rejection wasn't the only thing that lingered. The silence that followed felt even worse. For the first few hours after I left the restaurant, I tried to keep myself busy, pushing my feelings aside. I cleaned the house, put on a pot of tea, and tried to distract myself with the things I usually did when I needed to clear my head. But nothing worked. All I could think about was the look in Clara's eyes when she told me I wasn't invited. It wasn't just indifference, it was disdain. Like I was an inconvenience she didn't want to deal with. And Ethan? His absence in the entire situation was deafening. The phone sat on the kitchen counter, charging, and I kept glancing at it, hoping for a message, a call, anything from Ethan. I had left him a voicemail right after the restaurant incident, but still nothing. I wanted to believe that it was just a misunderstanding, that somehow this wasn't his choice. But deep down, I knew. I knew that if he really cared, He would have done something by now. The days turned into a week, and the silence only grew heavier. I couldn't bring myself to call him. I wanted to, but something inside me told me that it wouldn't change anything. The words would feel empty, like they would fall into a black hole, unheard and unanswered. I started to question myself. Did I really overstep? Was I too involved in their lives? I had always tried to be a good mother, a supportive mother-in-law, someone who was present without being intrusive. I tried to give them space, to let them build their own life together. But now I wondered if I had been too much, too often. Clara's words echoed in my mind. You've been too involved. Was she right? Had I pushed them away without even realizing it? But then the anger started to seep in. Ethan was my son. I had raised him, loved him, given him everything I could. And now, when I needed him the most, he had let me down. Clara had done what she wanted, and he had let her. There was no defense, no explanation, just silence. I couldn't understand how he could just stand by and let this happen. I had spent so many years being there for him, sacrificing my own time, my own life to make sure he had everything he needed. When his father passed away, I stepped up and became both mother and father to him. I worked 2 jobs, stayed up late, helping him with school projects, comforted him during heartbreaks, and celebrated his successes. I had always put him first. But in that moment, I realized that I hadn't been put first in his life. I hadn't even made the guest list for the most important night of his and Clara's year. After a few more days, I finally gathered the strength to send him a text message. I tried to keep it composed, trying not to let my hurt spill out too openly. Ethan, I've been waiting to hear from you. I know things didn't go the way I imagined on your anniversary, but I still don't understand why I wasn't invited. You and Clara are so important to me, and I just want to understand what happened. I stared at the phone screen after hitting send, my heart racing as I waited for a reply. A part of me felt desperate, like I was pleading for his attention. The other part of me told me to leave it alone, that I didn't need to beg for his love and respect. But the silence that had settled between us felt suffocating. Hours passed. No response. The next morning, I woke up early, unable to sleep. The weight of the situation kept me up, tossing and turning in my bed. I tried to distract myself with a walk in the park, but every step I took felt like it led me further into a pit of loneliness. The fall air was crisp, the trees shedding their golden leaves around me, but it all felt hollow. Even the beauty of nature couldn't mask the emptiness inside me. I decided to visit the local cafe that morning, hoping that a change of scenery would clear my head. As I walked in, I recognized a few familiar faces, neighbors, people I had seen around the neighborhood for years. But when they asked about Ethan and Clara, I found myself caught off guard. How could I explain the situation to them when I didn't even understand it myself? One of the neighbors, Martha, an older woman I had known for years, smiled at me as I sat down at the counter. Sophia, dear, how's Ethan? I saw him and Clara just the other day. They've really settled in nicely, haven't they? Her words, though innocent, struck me like a knife to the chest. I don't know, I stammered, trying to keep my emotions in check. We've had a bit of a falling out, actually. Martha frowned. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Everything okay? You seem so distant these days. I forced a smile, my hands trembling slightly around my coffee mug. I'll be fine, Martha. Just trying to work through some things. I didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to explain that my son had excluded me from his anniversary celebration. Didn't want to admit to myself that I was the one being shut out. Instead, I turned the conversation to something more neutral, something that would stop the questions from coming as the days went on. The lack of communication from Ethan became unbearable. I kept waiting for him to reach out, to explain, to at least acknowledge my hurt. But the silence grew louder. The longer he stayed away, the more the doubt crept in. Had I done something wrong? Or was this simply his way of pulling away? I tried to focus on my own life. I took up hobbies I had once enjoyed: reading, gardening, visiting friends. But none of it seemed to fill the void. Every time I saw a family laughing together, sharing a meal, I couldn't help but feel this deep, aching loss. It wasn't just the anniversary dinner. It was everything. It was the realization that the connection I had once shared with my son had begun to fade, and I wasn't sure how to get it back. Then, just when I had convinced myself that this was the new reality I had to accept, the phone rang again. It was Ethan. I held my breath as I saw his name light up the screen. This was it. The conversation I had been waiting for. Maybe he was finally going to apologize, to explain. Or perhaps he had just been too busy, too overwhelmed. I answered the call, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mom," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "We need to talk." But as soon as he spoke those words, I realized that nothing was going to be easy anymore. There was so much left unsaid, so much pain and confusion between us, and I wasn't sure if we could ever find a way to move forward. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the weight of the words pressing on me. "What's going on, Ethan?" But when he spoke again, it wasn't the conversation I had hoped for. "I just wanted to let you know that Clara and I are going through a lot right now. She's been feeling overwhelmed, and I've been trying to balance everything. I've been really busy with work and with her. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I guess I've been distant, and I didn't know how to make things right." The admission took me by surprise. It wasn't what I had expected. And as much as I wanted to be angry, I realized that this was all just a tangled mess of miscommunication, fear, and confusion. The disappointment I had felt suddenly seemed more like sorrow, like I had missed something important in my son's life. "I didn't mean to shut you out, Mom," Ethan continued, his voice breaking. I don't know what happened. I thought I could handle everything, but I've made a mess of things." I could hear the weight in his voice, the guilt, but it didn't take away the hurt. Still, I knew he was trying. He was trying to explain, trying to reach out, and that in itself was something. "I just want to be part of your life again, Ethan," I said softly. "But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know where we go from here." There was silence on the other end, a long pause where I could almost hear him processing everything. And then, softly, he replied, "We'll figure it out, Mom. I promise we will." I didn't know if that was enough. I didn't know if that would heal everything. But in that moment, it was the best we could do. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. The days after Ethan's call were a whirlwind of emotions. I had spent so much time wallowing in the hurt, the confusion, the rejection, that it was almost surreal to hear him finally open up. But still, a piece of me couldn't just let go of the past, the words he had said, the way Clara had treated me. All of it felt like scars I wasn't sure could heal. Yet, despite my doubts, I knew I needed to find a way to rebuild, not just for him, but for myself. That evening, after the call, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, staring out at the garden. The evening light cast long shadows, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. Everything outside seemed so peaceful, so unaffected by the storm brewing in my heart. I wish things could be as simple as the view before me. My mind kept racing, playing over and over the events that had unfolded. The anniversary dinner, the hurt, and the lingering silence that followed. But there was also the soft, tentative voice of my son, finally admitting the tension, the exhaustion, the confusion that he had been carrying for so long. It made me wonder how long he had been feeling like this, distant, overwhelmed, trying to balance two lives that were pulling him in different directions. I had always prided myself on being a resilient person, someone who could weather storms and bounce back. But this wasn't just a storm. It was my family, my son, and the fragile ties that had begun to unravel between us. Could we rebuild? Did I even know how to begin again? Over the next few days, I made a conscious effort to reach out to Ethan. It wasn't easy. I wanted to hold on to my hurt, to let him understand just how much I had been affected by the distance. But I also knew that if we were ever going to get past this, I couldn't keep clinging to old wounds. So, I decided to put aside my pride and make the first move. I sent him a text message the next morning. Simple but honest. Ethan, I've been thinking a lot about our conversation. I know things haven't been easy, but I want to work through this with you. I love you, and I just want us to find a way back to each other. It was difficult, almost painful to hit send. There was always the fear that he might not respond, or worse, that he wouldn't care enough to try. But I had to take the chance. I couldn't stay in this limbo of silence forever. Hours passed before I heard back, and when I finally saw his name light up my screen, my heart skipped a beat. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. I've been really struggling with Clara and the pressure of work. I've been distant, and I should have communicated better. I don't want to lose you. Can we meet up and talk? I breathed a sigh of relief. The weight that had been on my chest for days lifted just a little. He wanted to meet, to talk. I had hoped for this, and now it was happening. I wasn't sure where the conversation would lead, but it was a start. We arranged to meet at a small cafe, a place I used to visit when Ethan was a child. I remembered how we used to go there for Sunday brunch, the two of us, before Clara had come into the picture. Back then, it was just the two of us, and everything felt so simple, so uncomplicated. The thought of returning to that place brought both comfort and a bittersweet ache. When I arrived, I saw him waiting at a corner table, his head down, fingers tapping nervously on the edge of his coffee cup. He looked older than I remembered, more worn out, as if the years had taken their toll. I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, and it made me wonder how much of it had been caused by everything he had been carrying in silence. I approached slowly, my heart in my throat. He looked up as I got closer, and the moment our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time: guilt. Real, deep guilt. It made me soften just a little. Mum, he said quietly, standing up to greet me. I'm sorry. I took a deep breath, my emotions threatening to spill out. Ethan, I'm not angry anymore. I don't know what happened to us. It feels like everything changed overnight. He sat down again, and I followed suit. There was an awkward silence before he spoke. I don't know what happened either, Mum, he said, his voice thick with regret. I guess I just let everything slip away. Work, Clara. Trying to be the perfect husband, it all piled up. And I didn't even realize how much I was pulling away from you. But I should have known better. You've always been there for me. I've always known that. He paused, looking at me like he was searching for something. I think I just started to get so caught up in everything that I forgot to pay attention to the people who mattered most. I looked at him, my heart breaking. Ethan had always been such a caring boy, so full of love. But somewhere along the way, the pressures of life had made him forget who he was, and who his family was. You don't have to apologize for everything. Ethan, I said softly, reaching across the table to take his hand. I know life gets complicated, but shutting me out, that hurt. You've always been my son, and I can't help but feel like I was losing you. He squeezed my hand tightly, and his eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Mom. I never meant to make you feel that way. I just didn't know how to juggle everything. And Clara. His voice trailed off, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if I should press him for more. But something inside me told me to let him speak at his own pace. He needed to say this, and I needed to hear it. I don't know how to explain it, he continued, his voice shaky. But Clara and I have been fighting more and more lately. It's like we can't talk without it turning into an argument. And I feel like she doesn't understand what I'm going through. She doesn't know what it's like to be pulled in so many directions. To feel like you're failing everything. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. I could see how torn he was, caught between the two worlds. The pressure of his marriage and the lingering bond we shared. It wasn't an easy place to be, and as much as I wanted to be angry with him, I couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for what he was going through. You don't have to carry it all alone, Ethan, I said, my voice gentle. You've always had me. You always will. But you need to talk to me when things get tough. I'm not just your mother. I'm your family. We're supposed to be there for each other. He nodded slowly, tears welling up in his eyes. I know, Mom. I've been so stubborn. And I've pushed you away when you've always been the one who's had my back. I squeezed his hand, trying to offer him comfort. We'll get through this. Ethan, one step at a time. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something. It was a start dot as we sat there, talking quietly. I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't happen overnight. But as long as we were both willing to try, there was still hope. Later, that afternoon, after we had spent hours talking, laughing and crying, Ethan walked me to my car. Thank you, Mom, he said, his voice full of emotion. I needed this more than you know. I smiled, my heart full. Anytime, Ethan, anytime. As I drove away, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. We weren't fixed yet, but we were on the right path. The road ahead was long, but it was ours to walk together. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we could make it through. Together.